Notre Dame beat Boston College by 15 points on Saturday, but I don't think anybody walked away from that game feeling great. Was this just an ugly midseason wake-up call the Irish need, or did we just see the first real red flag heading into November? We're talking about it right here on Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily home for Notre Dame football. My name is Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host. I'm a Notre Dame alum, producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering the Irish since 2020. I am thrilled to have you here with me on Tuesday, November 4th, and thanks for making this your first watch or listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And before we get rolling here, I'd like to remind you to please subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow on your preferred podcast platform, and don't forget to submit your questions for the Friday mailbag in the comments or on social media. Now, it is Tuesday, which means my good friend and our boots on the ground correspondent Luke Smith will join the show today to give his report from Chestnut Hill, which by all accounts was an extremely subdued atmosphere, to say the least. Then we're going to break down the three things we liked from Notre Dame's win over Boston College, including a nice bounce-back performance from quarterback C.J. Carr, and everything we didn't like, highlighted by a truly atrocious showing from Notre Dame's entire special teams unit. We have plenty to get into from this game, so let's dive right in. All right, Luke Smith's here to talk about Notre Dame's weird and at times painful 25-10 win over Boston College. And I have a feeling that after today, we're going to want to bury this game forever. And hopefully the Irish bounce back strong so we can forget about it and this isn't a sign of things to come. But Luke, as he so often is, was on hand in Chestnut Hill on Saturday. So take us through the scene. Was it more frustrating to watch in person, or was it more frustrating for those of us who are trying to figure out how to watch on the ESPN app after this YouTube TV disaster?
I guess it was a pretty good day for people to not really be able to watch because you did not miss much. I cannot imagine anybody had a worse time than I did trying to watch that game, particularly through the third quarter or so. But all of that said, it was a gorgeous day in Chestnut Hill, really nice. Unfortunately, they have just about the lamest tailgating setup of all time. They really only have a handful of lots. Some of them are ticketed too, like you need extra tickets outside of your game ticket to get in and actually participate, which is very strange. Nothing's very centralized. So, walked around a little bit for maybe 2 hours or so before the game with some friends, and just had like a 12-pack, but it was not what I recalled it being in 2017, to be honest, when I went there. And I don't think anybody has talked about this enough, just how sterile this atmosphere is. Yes, I get it. It's Boston College. And yeah, they were 1-7 going into this game, but it's a really weird atmosphere starting with the tailgating and culminating in a stadium that feels just a lot like a high school stadium. I was there with my family and my girlfriend who had only ever been to Notre Dame Stadium before for Notre Dame games. And she was like, this reminds me of my high school. Like everybody's sitting the whole game too. There's just no juice whatsoever. And I don't remember it being so lethargic back in 2017. Looking back, that BC team did win 7 games. They went to a bowl, but I don't want to make this an excuse for the performance, but there was just really no energy at all. And I think that needs to be taken into consideration when examining this game, because this was one of the most boring yet agonizing games I've had to sit through in a long time.
So when you're saying you need a ticket to get into the tailgating thing, do you mean like just as a casual bystander? Because obviously you need tickets to get in the stadium lot at Notre Dame, but anyone could just walk in and enjoy a tailgate.
Correct. Yeah, you need there are, I guess, a handful of open lots where you need to just show a game ticket, which I think is strange still. But there's Shea Field, I think is what it's called, which is kind of their big tailgating lot that seems to be on the nicer side. You need like a separate ticket to get in there to tailgate. So what's the point of that?
Well, however stale it was inside the stadium, I think that came through for those Notre Dame fans who are watching. I actually ended up running into a BC grad later in the day, and he asked me, like, how bad did Notre Dame dominate us today? And I was like, wow, you didn't even care to watch or even check the score. And this guy actually cares about sports. So maybe there's just a boycott among the fan base because they had started out 1-7, but give credit to the Boston College team because they didn't play like a 1-7 team. They came, they brought the fight to Notre Dame. And I think you could tell from the opening series that Notre Dame was just going to try to coast through this game as much as Marcus Freeman would hate to admit it. I don't think the team had any juice from the moment that game kicked off, and that persisted throughout the rest of the game. I think that's a big reason why they ended up with such a lackluster performance.
No doubt. And I think, if they get a different opponent off the bye, then maybe things look a little bit different than how they did. But it was just kind of a really bad time to play Boston College. And again, I don't want to make that an excuse, but I think at the same time, also there's 3 or 4 plays that go a different way, and that we're feeling a little bit differently coming out of that game too. It very easily could have been 45-10. At least could have been, 31-10 if they could put the ball through the uprights, even without some of those misses on touchdowns that they could have had. But regardless, I am looking at this as more of a one-off and less of, this is who they are, even if the trend lately is they really haven't been as dominant, especially offensively, as they were against Arkansas and Purdue.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you bring that up because before we started doing this, we always start off with the 3 things we liked and 3 things we didn't like, especially coming off a win, because we like to start with the positives. But this was just such a weird game. I considered, do we flip it around? Because there are 2 schools of thought. You could look at this game and say Notre Dame left a ton of points on the board. They played like a D- performance, and they still should have blown Boston College out of the water. And it was never really in doubt, even though it was a 1-possession game late in the second half. Or you could take the pessimistic and maybe a more alarming approach to this game and say, wow, this team is just not a playoff caliber team. I don't think that's true. Like I was getting comments after the game, like this is a elimination game for the playoff. Notre Dame doesn't deserve to be in. I think that's just an overreaction in the moment. But when you look at the positives from this game, what are the things that stand out to you?
I think first and foremost, it's Josh Burnham. He finally appears to be healthy after battling injuries for most of the year, and that's just really good to see. I'm not going to go as far as saying that this was the best game of his career because this guy literally had 2 sacks in the national championship game last year, but he played exceptionally well. Had 3 tackles for loss and a sack. Should have had a second sack if not for an atrocious face mask call. And what's more important is that he's coming along at the right time, and that's really when you want to start to see your upperclassmen come through as you're getting into November when you're trying to contend for a college football playoff spot. And this is a guy that played really well in the college football playoff last year. And this is kind of what we were expecting to see. And now that he's healthier, you're seeing it.
Yeah, he actually got way more playing time than Bryce Young did. And a lot of people have been frustrated about where Bryce Young has been at. He came in with all these really high expectations. I feel like I'm partially to blame because I said he could be like the next Stephon Tuitt. But then you have Josh Burnham come out there and play like that, and it's a reminder of how good he can be because he's shown flashes. But unfortunately for him, I feel like he's been dealing with nagging injuries for the past 2.5 years. So if he's anywhere close to 100%, and that's the type of production that Notre Dame is going to get out of Josh Burnham, I think that kind of changes things for the entire front 7.
It totally does because it frees up, guys along the rest of the defensive line to pressure the quarterback more, especially if they're worried about that. And you got to wonder, like, does Junior Tui Halamaka have a game like that in him down the stretch here after we saw him produce like that in the college football playoff last year? There's some of these older guys. I really hope that Burnham's performance can be a tone setter moving forward because I definitely think that the rest of the defense can build off of that.
Yeah, I just pulled it up. Josh Burnham played 40 plays. Bryce Young was only out there on the field for 24, and they play the same position. But a crazy stat from this game, Boston College had 81 offensive plays. Like usually 70 is a lot, but they had these really long drives. Obviously the 21-yard drive was the headliner, but it did feel like the Notre Dame defense was on the field all night. And now the stats reflect that. I mean, 81 total offensive plays is a ton. And Boston College won the time of possession battle 35 minutes to 24 minutes. And I felt like that came through in the game as well.
It totally did. And that 21 minutes, I guess it wasn't 21 minutes, although it might have been close to 21
in real
minutes
time.
In real
Yeah.
time. Maybe even longer. That was just absolutely agonizing. And of course that was extended by a handful of penalties that didn't really agree with either. But man, that was just really hard. And I think that's another way we got to view this lens is the defense was on the field for 81 plays and let up 10 points. I mean, that's not that bad.
Right. But the good thing about that is as soon as Notre Dame got the ball back, they went right down the field and scored. And despite some shaky play by the offense, it was not a complete game. The fact that CJ Carr was able to bounce back like he did, I think is really meaningful for this team going forward. And that's one of the main things that I liked from this game. He looked a little bit rushed early on. He wasn't into a rhythm right away. It started with that underthrown deep ball to Malachi Fields in the first play of the game, even though they got the pass interference call. That would have been a touchdown if Carr just threw it to him and he didn't have to stop in the air. But then he settled into a groove and he looked like the player we saw a few weeks ago. He finished 18 of 25 passing, 299 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. But he could have had 350 if he connected with Malachi Fields on another deep ball late in the game when Notre Dame was going for the kill shot. And very quietly, CJ Carr is extremely good against the blitz. Like when Boston College blitzed him, they did it 10 times on 27 total dropbacks. He went 7 of 9 passing for 126 yards and 2 touchdowns. So teams are going to continue stacking the box to try to stop the run. Boston College did that, and they were effective most of the game. But as long as it's not pouring down rain, CJ Carr is going to pick you apart whenever you do that, and he did it again on Saturday.
Definitely. And I think what people need to understand too is that, yeah, sure, he missed Fields on that one. There was also the KK Smith play where an interception got taken off the board due to a holding. There also should have been pass interference on that because he got shoved in the air, and that's why that guy picked that ball off. I was in that end zone. It was egregious. I don't know how that didn't get called. But the thing is, deep balls do not get hit at a high rate in college football. I mean, like the average completion percentage is nowhere close to what Carr has been averaging so far this year on those. So yes, you're gonna have some misses, but the hit rate is so high that it can be frustrating at times where felt like they really just left a little bit out there. I mean, the law of averages, you really got to take what he's been doing so far because it's been very impressive.
And even that miss to Malachi Fields late in the game was still just one of those plays where you're like, man, this dude's got a ton of arm talent because that ball was in the air for like 60 plus yards. So look, if you're going to miss, typically you'd want to be a little bit short so maybe you can get that pass interference penalty, but that game was well in hand at that point. It was kind of like CJ Carr was showing off on that play.
Yeah, and I mean, why wouldn't he? We know that he likes to take deep shots, and especially against this defense, I don't really blame him. But it'll be interesting to see if he can build on this. Navy's defense obviously isn't very good. I think it'll be a better test against Pittsburgh in 2 weeks, but it'll be intriguing to see how he improves down the stretch here in November because I do anticipate he will continue to improve.
Before Luke and I get to the rest of the things that we like from this game, including a nice performance from tight end Eli Raridan, I want to tell you about this great new promotion courtesy of our friends at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. All right, here's my pick. Last week, we talked about Victor Wembanyama winning the MVP. Well, at the time, he was plus 300 on FanDuel. Right now, he's plus 380, so you actually get better value. I'm sticking with that pick. I know that SJ is a big favorite for Oklahoma City, but I'm telling you, Wembanyama is playing like the player we thought he could be out of the draft, so get in on it now, plus 380 to win the MVP. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Is there anything else from the offense that you liked from Saturday?
I mean, it's not so much something, I guess, bigger picture, but just that Jeremiah Love house call. It's nice to see him have moments like he has the last 2 games. I was in that end zone that Notre Dame's back was facing on his 94-yard touchdown run, and you could just tell as soon as he made the first cut that he was gone. And with that run, becomes the first player in Notre Dame history with 2 90-plus yard touchdown runs. Just really incredible achievement and a testament to just how special of a player he is and how he's going to go down in the Notre Dame record books. But more importantly, in that moment, it allowed me the opportunity to exhale a little bit after just not being worried about the outcome of the game. I was never worried about the outcome of the game, but I was very annoyed with how it was playing out. And I just didn't want to have to keep acting like this was actually a game.
I'm with you. That was a really nice play at a perfect time for everyone to just take a big exhale there. And it just shows you how special he is when Jeremiah Love is running down. He's clearly realizing he's going to score and that nobody is going to catch him. But around his own 40-yard line, he turns over to the Notre Dame sideline, and it looked like he was having a chat. Like I posted on Twitter, he's having a nice little convo with Notre Dame as he goes in to score. Well, now that some time has passed, we have some additional context about what was going on there. I believe his dad tweeted that Love was looking towards the sideline either for Coach Sider or Coach Freeman to try to find them or say something to them, because I guess they challenged him to have another 90-plus yard touchdown this season. I don't know if they said it right before that play, but then he came through and delivered. And even though he was looking over there, he's still moving full speed, and Boston College had no chance of catching him. So we're constantly reminded just how special of a player he is, and plays like that just make you go, wow, man, this guy is truly one of one.
Yeah, and especially on a field against Boston College, which obviously is not the best defense or the best team in the world, the best athletes in the world. It's just funny seeing him run against those guys because none of those dudes had a chance against him all day. And Notre Dame did come out with a video on that segment today. It was Sider, and you can see Sider's running down the sideline, like pointing at him as Love is talking to him too. So another kind of funny layer to that moment.
Yeah, and it's funny too because like Marcus Freeman is always very adamant about the way that guys celebrate and how he always wants them to hand the ball off to the officials. But when you've got a guy as good as Jeremiah Love who could do something like that, to look to the sideline and track down his assistant coach as he's going into the end zone, I think Marcus Freeman has no choice but just to relax a little bit.
Yeah. Did anybody ask him about him hitting the Heisman? Because I don't think I saw that either, but he definitely hit that.
He did. They included that in the video that you're talking about, but the Heisman campaign is fully underway, at least on social media. And good thing he had that play, because otherwise, I mean, Boston College had held him in check, but now you look at his stat sheet, it's got a much different tune to it now that he is 17 carries, 136 yards. And it looks like he averaged 8 yards a carry, but you know, it did come easy for him against Boston College. They stacked the box, and for the most part, they held Notre Dame's run game in check.
They really did, and thankfully, as a security blanket for that, we talked about Carr taking deep shots. One of the recipients of those deep shots, Eli Raritan, and I think his continued production is something that's been so impressive. He has to be the best tight end in the country without a touchdown this year. I can't imagine there's many others with his level of production that don't have that. And he had another great game. 3 catches for 59 yards, long of 30. And Jamie Uyama of Irish Sports Daily pointed out he's caught 7 of 7 deep targets this year for 254 yards. I believe a deep target is defined as a pass that's in the air greater than 20 yards. There's no tight end in the country that has caught more, and it's really about time he's rewarded with the touchdown this week. And I know Navy struggled to cover tight ends. He needs to get in the end zone this week.
We've been calling it, man. I gave out the pick before the game started. CJ Carr over passing yards. That hit with ease. He only had 222.5 was the number for him going into that game. And I thought, oh, he's going to clear that. And he almost cleared it in the first half, but then they just didn't have the ball nearly as much in the second half for him to like double that up. But man, I was really hoping Eli Raritan would get a touchdown. But I really like that he's going up and making contested catches now, because with his frame, he should be able to do that all the time, and he just hasn't really a ton up until the second half of the season, and now he's just like a safety net, especially on third downs, and he already has 406 receiving yards on the year. Before the year, I said if he could get anywhere close to Cole Kmet in 2019, that'd be a big success, and he's only 100 yards away, so that's very much within the realm of possibility for Eli Raritan.
Yeah, it is, and it's definitely what we were all hoping for going into this year, but it's nice to actually see it come into fruition.
All right, I want to switch it over to the defense here, because for as frustrating as this game was at times, I thought Chris Asher's defense for the most part was really, really strong in this game, in particular the run defense. And it's been a strength for the team all year. But they held Boston College to 12 total rushing yards in the game. 12. And I understand it's a 1-7 ACC team, but they're still a Power 4 team with some good players. Turbo Richard is a good running back who had produced at a high level before coming into this game, and they held them to 12 total yards. That's extremely impressive. Now, they did sack the quarterback 5 times, but even if you remove the sacks from the equation, they held Boston College to 1.7 yards per carry, and the longest run they gave up in the entire game was 6 yards. For the season, they're allowing just 2.8 yards per carry. That's 10th in the country, and 89.3 yards per game. That's 11th. They do need to get better in like the 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 situations, but this defense and that front seven in particular have just been really stout as of late.
They really have been. And it's interesting too, because when Notre Dame was really good on defense the last few years, they weren't especially stout against the run, which was interesting, especially having, Howard Cross and Riley Mills. They weren't always the best run defense. They've really improved on that, and maybe they've regressed somewhat in the pass defense, but they're playing complementary enough football. I do think with the 3rd and 4th and 1s, one of the things they need to do is really limit the amount of yards they're giving up on 1st and 2nd down, because they're putting themselves in too many 3rd and short situations, and they actually had a decent amount of stuffs on 3rd down in this game. But you get the 4th and 1, that's where they're starting to struggle a little bit. So it's about those earlier downs and really just keeping it third and medium or 3rd and long, so that you can't run the ball in those situations, because that's definitely an area of improvement that'll be needed.
It also helped that USC went out there and rushed for over 200 yards against Nebraska in a game where Jaden Mayava might have played the worst game of his career. He finished 9 of 23 passing, and USC was in a dogfight for most of that game. They ended up coming out on top 21-17. Obviously very good for Notre Dame's playoff resume, but King Miller had 129 rushing yards against the Cornhuskers, and they couldn't do anything with him against Notre Dame. So it's clear that this isn't just a thing against weaker opponents. Like, they could take a running game and shut it down, which is honestly perfect timing with Navy coming up this Saturday.
It is, and that's where they'll really be put to the test, especially on 3rd and 4th down, because we know Navy's going to go for it a lot, especially in those short yardage situations. Notre Dame's going to have to show their discipline and really kind of bring that to the table on Saturday. But another thing they're going to have to do, especially against a Navy team that's going to try to get under their skin, is shore up their penalty problem, because we could talk all day about the officials. In fact, we already have enough all season, but the reality remains Notre Dame has a penalty problem, and they're just putting themselves in bad situations far too often, and that just needs to be fixed. It's especially been an issue over the last 4 games. They've averaged 8 penalties for 82.5 yards per game, and some of those have been drive extenders, or on the offensive side, drive ruiners, and it's just not very disciplined, especially on the defensive side. They just need to clean some of this stuff up.
They could have called a block in the back on Jordan Faison too, on that long touchdown run. Faison just kind of pushed a guy in the back that he didn't have to. Now, the refs didn't call it, and it would have been just wildly unnecessary out of Faison, because it was a touchdown regardless. Like, if he just let up completely, Jeremiah Love was gone. But look, officiating is bad enough. We've already talked about it plenty, like you mentioned. And then for Notre Dame to go out there and just gift Boston College, and it wasn't just like they would do it on 1st down. It was always like in the critical spot. Like, Kingston Biliamasa's unsportsmanlike, that was on a 3rd down. Jalen Sneed's roughing the passer was on a 3rd down. And that was just so inexcusable, especially from a senior, and on a day where the refs were clearly throwing anything for a roughing the passer penalty. For him to do that just after the play, that was like Jalen Sneed circa 2 years ago. So I'm with you. Like, the officiating was bad in this game, but Notre Dame also didn't really help themselves out much either.
No, and at a certain point, like, you can't blame officials. Like, this is just who you are, and I don't want that to be who Notre Dame is. They need to clean it up. And so, yeah, I know that the fan base has really liked to complain about officials the last month, and I've been with you on a lot of this stuff, but a lot of this is just they got to clean this up and play more disciplined.
They do. And I think Marcus Freeman has been open about the fact that he's willing to accept some penalties if it's a PI and the defender is just being aggressive, trying to make a play on the ball, and the ref decides, to throw a flag in that situation. I think those are the ones that he's willing to accept, but it's the pre-snap stuff. It's the stuff after the play. And there was a couple times during the game when Notre Dame was like towing the line a little bit on stuff after the play. I was like, dude, just stop talking to him. I understand that it was chippy against Boston College, but at the same time, you can't stoop to their level. And it felt like Notre Dame never took those moments when Boston College was chippy and they were chirping them. I thought it would basically be the motivation they need to put their foot on the gas and then run away with it, but that's just not how things transpired.
No. And again, I think Navy's going to try to do the same exact thing this week, so hopefully they can use that and respond differently.
Does Navy talk trash?
Are you kidding? I mean, they're like one of the dirtiest teams out there.
Yeah, they could be dirty with the cut blocks and stuff, but like I always thought it was interesting if you're a player on Notre Dame, like are you allowed to chirp? By doing so, are you disrespecting the troops?
I don't know. I think you kind of just got to let your play show up, but this team definitely seems to get a little bit more irked by other teams than maybe some Notre Dame teams we've seen in the past.
That is true. That is true. We've already started talking about the things we didn't like. I did want to give the defense one more shout out for what they've been doing in terms of creating havoc. Early on in the season, it felt like the Notre Dame defense was allergic to making plays. Now I'm shocked when they don't capitalize on a play. Like Tay Johnson's dropped what would have been a sure pick six in the first half. They finished with 5 sacks, 12 total tackles for loss. They had 3 interceptions in this game. They could have had 2 touchdowns in this game because Tay Johnson's knee went down. That looked like it was going to be a walk-in touchdown. And then Drake Bowen's fumble recovery for a touchdown got wiped off. I maintain that the wide receiver never actually secured that. And they also had 7 passes deflected, including some ones on critical downs, like Luke Talich came up big on a 4th down. Like Luke Talich hasn't been on the field a ton this season, but it feels like whenever he's out there, he's making plays. So this has been a really remarkable turnaround for the defense. Yeah, they've got to clean up some stuff, like allowing too many chunk plays in the passing game, but they have a ton of playmakers on that side of the ball. They're being very aggressive. And even though sometimes they toe the line with these penalties, I do love how aggressive they've been, and they've been rewarded a lot more than not as of late.
Definitely. It's been a strong resurgence. And I think the interceptions in particular, you're finally starting to see what we'd heard about in camp where they're having, picks every day, all day. And now it's really, over the last month, has really started to play out that way.
They lead the country in interceptions, which is pretty impressive because that was obviously
16's a lot.
Yeah, 16's a lot. And, they lose Xavier Watts, who is the ultimate ball hawk for the team. And we've been kind of waiting for Tay Johnson to become that guy. He drops that one early. He's had a couple other chances before. And then it looks like when he got that one where he's just literally laying on the ground, maybe that's the switch that flips and he ends up just racking up all kinds of them towards the end of the season.
Yeah. I mean, I think back to Xavier Watts's 2023 or whatever that was. It was really that USC game that was kind of the catalyst for him having just kind of a run and picks down the rest of the season. Maybe it's the similar type situation for Tay Johnson.
We're going to be right back with Luke to break down everything we didn't like from this game. And yes, we are going to talk about the kicking situation. But before we get to that, I want to tell you about Game Time. College football is in full swing, and I could not be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It is the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games for as low as $25. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. I love the zone deals too. Just pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. If you want to attend Notre Dame's upcoming home game against Navy on Saturday, Game Time is the perfect place for you to buy tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, we have talked a lot about the things we liked. We've already talked about the penalty problem that Notre Dame has. I want to talk about the special teams. Obviously, the kicking game can only be described as a disaster that rivals the Titanic sinking, the BP oil spill in 2010, 1 of 3 on extra points, and a shank on the long field goal attempt, especially after such a great drive on offense to get into comfortable field goal range. Like, it's all so bad. I'm actually not even sure it's worth discussing anymore on this show because what more can you possibly say? It's a disaster. I don't know if they can figure it out. They're going to try. We'll see. But the kicking woes actually made people forget about other terrible plays on special teams that happened throughout the game, like Jordan Faison's muff punt that he never had a chance of catching in the sun early on. That was a bad play by the veteran in that situation. They had a kick-catch interference penalty early on in the game that wiped away a great punt by James Rendell, and it was just a dumb play in that moment. And then they ran a terrible fake punt on 4th and 2. And yeah, Part of the fake punt call is on Marcus Freeman, and maybe if Love pitches it in that situation, we're having a different discussion here. And then they missed a blocked punt that looked like a layup, like they had a free shot at it, just whiffed. And Jadarian Price ran directly into a Boston College player on his lone kick return opportunity. This was just a truly awful day for Marty Biagi's unit. And I guess the one bright spot they have is that James Rendell, the punter, is in fact him.
Yeah, Rendell's been terrific. Outside of that, and it's been really tough sledding. I know we've had the kick returns, but Faison's probably muffed 3 or 4 punts, honestly. Like, this isn't a new thing. It's a little bit alarming out there. And then you talk about the kickers. I don't know if Burnett's hurt or if he's just in his head. It's not good. I don't think Eric Schmidt is going to be on the team next year. I mean, seriously, like, the guy has missed 2 or 3 extra points. His field goal attempts have not been close. He hasn't even made one. And he's kicked the ball out of bounds like 6 or 7 times. That's not worthy of a scholarship. And I know he was the number 2 kicker in the country coming out of college or coming out of high school. But I mean, I'm sorry. Like, I don't mean to be harsh. I don't think he's worth a scholarship spot if this is the type of production he's going to have.
It's weird because they were pretty high on him in the preseason. And he, they said he has a great leg, but I think at this point it's all mental. And Marcus Freeman even alluded to that to some degree in his press conference on Monday, that he's going to have the kicker spend more time with the team psychologist. And honestly, they can't spend enough time with that person because it's just awful across the board. And for the record, I don't like Marcus Freeman just swapping him out every time that they miss. I don't think that's going to do anything. Going forward, I think that they just have to look at Noah Burnett and say, hey, man, if you're healthy, you're our guy going forward, and he might miss a few, but if they just stick with him, at least he has proved that he can do it in college before. Like, he was pretty good at North Carolina. I'd much rather him go out there and try to figure it out than do this like musical chairs of kickers where none of these guys have any confidence, and they realize if they miss it, whether it be an extra point or a field goal, they're not going to play again. So it's not a great situation, but I think at this point you just have to ride with Noah Burnett and see what happens.
I mean, he said it himself. If you have 3 kickers, you don't have 1. So I don't anticipate that will continue to happen moving forward, and I just sure hope it doesn't for my own sanity.
One other thing that I really didn't like from this game, and it's another recurring issue, it's Jadarian Price's fumbling. The book is out on Price. If you really go after the ball, you can rip it out, especially near the goal line. He now has 3 fumbles near the end zone this year. And then last year, he had a fumble against Louisville on his right in front of his own end zone. So this is just going to be part of his game. It's going to be part of the evaluation. When he goes to the NFL draft, it's going to be something that they bring up. And he actually almost fumbled on the play before the actual fumble. And you could tell that the BC players were being very intentional about it. They were doing everything they can to get it out. And yeah, everyone's always punching for the ball, but they were barely even trying to tackle him. They went right for the ball whenever Jadarian Price was out there. And it actually made me really nervous when he was in the game late against USC, given his history of fumbling the football. But with all of this being said, I think it's time we see Aeneas Williams get some action. Love and Price should still be the main attraction. I'm not saying bench Jadarian Price, but you can't tell me that Aeneas Williams can't get you like 10 plays a game or even less than that. 1, to keep those guys fresh, but 2, because he's a good enough player. He contributed at a high level for Notre Dame in the college football playoff last season. They have clear issues trying to run the ball in short yardage situations and near the goal line with Jadarian Price. Like, I don't know what more the coaching staff needs to see to give number 22 a try.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation because obviously you're not going to bench him. He's too talented, too productive to do that. And your point about Williams makes sense, but you got to wonder where his head is at. He has not played all years outside of special teams. Like, how bought in is he still at this point? If I were him, I'd probably be pretty annoyed, to be honest. So maybe that's part of the reason why they haven't done it, is because they somewhat foolishly did limit some of his action. And I know he was hurt earlier in the year, but I'm curious where he's at mentally right now, just because it has to have been an incredibly frustrating season for him so far.
If he wasn't bought in, I think 1, they'd probably take him off special teams, and 2, he could have redshirted. He could have decided, hey, I'm good on this year. I'm going to just quit the team, preserve my eligibility, and then maybe transfer in the offseason. But I don't know. When he came in against Arkansas and he scored a touchdown, he was really excited, celebrating with his teammates. And I'm sure if he went out there and you gave him some carries, he might get all of his anger out on the opposition, and then maybe he'll be back and bought into whatever role he has. But considering you can't play Jadarian Price near the end zone at this point, like if he's in around the 10-yard line, I'm going to be panicking because of what he's done in the past. And Jeremiah Love is racking up not just carries, but snaps this season. So that involves blocking as well. Like, I just think he needs a bit of a break here as they get down the stretch and they try to preserve him for hopefully another playoff run. Like, that is really where I think Aeneas Williams can help, not just taking carries away from Price, but just giving those guys some rest, because it's already November, man, and they've been out there on the field a lot.
Yeah, they've definitely they've played a lot, so there's no doubt about that. It'll be interesting to see what they do moving forward with that situation. Another thing I'd like to see Notre Dame re-examine moving forward, and I've definitely complained about this in the past, the ACC scheduling arrangement. This has gotten so boring. Since 2017, Notre Dame is 43-4 against the ACC in the regular season. The games have no juice, and they honestly never seem to get the good teams in the right years either to boost their resume. For example, this year, no UVA, no Georgia Tech, no Louisville. And it's just not interesting. You don't have the rivalries that you would have even with some of the schools in the Big Ten, like a Michigan or a Michigan State, even a Purdue. I'm just so sick of this thing. And the games are not interesting. That's kind of all that it really boils down to it. And I don't anticipate they actually will re-examine this right now, but I've gotten super tired of watching these crappy ACC teams.
It's funny because next year, too, it looks like they've got a Big Ten schedule to open the year with Wisconsin, Michigan State, at Purdue. Hopefully, the ACC schedule is a little bit better. I mean, they got at Florida State, Miami, at home. Who knows what's going to happen there? SMU, and then at Syracuse. So, in theory, it could be better. At North Carolina, I mean, God only knows who's going to be on the sidelines for that game, whether it be Bill Belichick or some other guy who's probably over 70 years old, because that's what North Carolina seems to like as their head football coach. But yeah, I'm with you. This has been an issue that's been ongoing for years, and it just hasn't gotten any better.
No, it hasn't, and it won't anytime soon as some of the ACC's preeminent brands just continue to regress even more and more, with Clemson falling off a cliff. Florida State's no good. North Carolina could be a brand. They're not. It's just it's not a good situation.
Yeah, we have not talked about that yet, but pretty poor timing for Notre Dame to announce a new rivalry, long-term rivalry plan with Clemson, and then for them to go out there and lay an egg. They're 3-5 on the year. Now, I will give them some credit. The pass interference penalty that led to the game-winning touchdown for Duke was legitimately the worst penalty I've seen all year. Like, if that happened against Notre Dame, I would literally protest. I would go to the ACC headquarters. It was that bad. I mean, again, credit to Duke for capitalizing, actually scoring the touchdown and then getting the 2-point conversion. But they're terrible, man, and Notre Dame is now in bed with them for the long term.
They haven't won a Power 4 home game in over 380 days.
And Florida State, they just won an ACC game. I was going to say they haven't won an ACC game in over a year. So Mike Norvell lives to see another day. But Luke, as we wrap things up here, we hopefully put a bow on this Boston College game. We'll bury the tape. We'll bury the football. We'll never think of it again. Do you have any final thoughts on this game before we start to look ahead towards Navy?
Well, I just do think the natural reaction for a fan base when you have a game like this is, we're not very good. We're going to fall in the rankings. And I think I can even find myself like at times watching games thinking, this isn't going to look good, but it's really just tunnel vision. And I kept hearing all these Notre Dame fans saying they were going to drop in the rankings after this week. And it's just, we don't pay attention to the other games that go on, and also don't realize that nobody's really watching the Notre Dame Boston College game, especially on days when, YouTube TV and ESPN haven't come to an agreement. But there's no doubt this team's flawed, has a lot of stuff to clean up, but the reality remains they've won 6 in a row, all by double digits, and they've never really been in much of a game at all during this run. You could make the argument USC was competitive, obviously, for most of that game. That's a good team, and then in the fourth quarter, they pulled away too. But what happened on Sunday? They jumped into the top 10. We'll see what happens tonight because this will come out on Tuesday with the CFP, but I imagine they'll be in a similar position, to be honest. I think they're going to be right around there. And if they're not, that's okay. But I just think, people need to relax a little bit and realize that there's a lot of games that get played and still need to get played. And just as long as Notre Dame keeps winning, they're going to be just fine.
All right. I think that is a perfect place to end it. Luke, thanks for coming on. And we're going to see you next week after a night game against Navy at home. I know you are so pumped up to watch the Irish take on the Midshipmen at night. I think you're probably going to get like 3 hours of a dark tailgate, and I just know you're counting down to the days till that one.
Oh, yeah. Night game against Navy, probably some rain in South Bend, just like every other game this year. It's going to be awesome, so can't wait.
That's a wrap for today's episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first watch or listen of the day. If you have not already, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow the show wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave a like, rate the show, and drop a review. It really helps more Notre Dame fans find the show. I'm going to be right back here tomorrow morning to react to the initial college football playoff rankings. We're going to break down where Notre Dame lands and what the road ahead looks like for the Irish. There's going to be a lot for us to discuss, so make sure you tune in. I'll see you tomorrow.